104.7 The Cave. KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Touchdown, Kansas City!
Now, it's time for Ned Talk.
Yep, it's Ned Talk right here on 104.7 The Cave, your local live sports talk show. We need to get something out of the way right away as we start the show today. Ned, can you confirm or deny for our fans, are you seeing Taylor Swift?
I will vehemently deny.
Really? I don't know if I vehemently deny that. Okay, all right.
At my age, you vehemently deny anything.
Well, there was some rumor that she would be here today because she wanted to see how you did things. You went to one of her shows, so she's here today. Do I have you mixed up with somebody else?
You do. I didn't. My offspring did. My daughter and my granddaughter went and loved it. They loved it.
I think I have you mixed up with Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
I'm not to be mixed up with Travis Kelce.
No, you guys look the same with your shirt off, though. You really do. All right, I'm Joe Westen. That's Ned Reynolds. Alex Scott's with us. Alec, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Glad to be hitting the ground running in football season, and also not seeing Taylor Swift.
Okay. And what about you, Josh Roberts? You dating Taylor Swift?
Let's keep it a secret.
Okay, Josh being mysterious here. All right, I guess the big story for us to start out with today is the Chiefs have a defense.
Yeah, they do.
2 touchdowns in 8 quarters. What do you think, Mr. Reynolds? What do you think?
Well, I think the addition of Mr. Jones last week was certainly instrumental and surprised me a little bit. He's been out since the Super Bowl, hasn't played not a bit of football other than his own workouts. And he comes in and he is dominant. Now, you look at the numbers and you don't see it, 1.5 sacks and 1 tackle, but that's not what he's supposed to do. He's a disruptor, and he disrupted Trevor Lawrence just as great as anybody could possibly. I was really, really impressed with their defense.
What about you, Alec? I know you said you didn't watch the game, but what's your takeaway from what you heard during the course of the week?
The defense is the star of the show, and like you said, even if Chris Jones and that defensive line is just such a big boost, and to be able to go into Jacksonville and hold that team down the way they did, props, hats off to the defense. They're the reason that they won that game. But maybe another week now, Kelsey's knee feeling a little better, we can hope to see the offense, because they were the letdown last week, and that's not something we've been used to seeing ever since Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid have been in Kansas City. But we've kind of known that for a while, is that Travis Kelce is a top 5 offensive weapon in the NFL, and then once you start getting past him, it thins out to a lot of, well, he could or maybe he cans. So we'll see what they do today. A better matchup at home against a reeling Bears squad.
Yeah, what about you, Josh Roberts? Did you get a chance to take in the game?
I did, and I was impressed with the defense. I agree with Ned. Chris Jones is a good disruptor, which creates more opportunities for Karlaftis and the other defensive guys, which you saw in this game. They had constant pressure on Trevor Lawrence and his hair. And you know what? Here's what's crazy, Ned. 1.5 sacks in one game. If you extrapolate that over a season, that's like the record.
It is.
Yep.
I mean, so he did great. He had a great game. I'm glad that he's back to form. But like I said, I'm glad that it's creating more opportunity. That whole defense has grown without him, and so now putting him back in there makes him that much better. And they did win that game because the offense sputtered, and I feel like they play around too much. They do too many trick plays. They do too many goofy, funny things, and there's a time and a place for that after you're up by 30, but not when you're in the heat of trying to win a game.
What was the most impressive part of the Chiefs' defense? They to me, they played extremely well, both on the front side. Of course, I think they have the most underrated linebacking core in the NFL.
Yeah.
But that secondary's often been maligned, but they had a great game too. What
I think the fact that they were Jacksonville's taking completely out of its game plan. They had an altogether different idea of what they were going to be doing, which they had done with Trevor Lawrence. He's got a year's experience, and he played against the Chiefs twice last year, so he knew what to expect. But it's the fact that the defense, led by Jones, took Jacksonville right out of any game plan that they tried. Hey, you held a team to no touchdowns, 3 field goals?
Yeah.
Come on, in the NFL, that's unheard of, and that's what the Chiefs did. Now, today, when they play the Bears, I expect more of the same. It's a different team, and they're not a very good one, but it's not like comparing Alabama, we'll say, with SMS or somebody like that.
Right.
Now, the talent levels, the Bears have talent. It just isn't at the same level as the Chiefs.
Well, that's a good team. The Trevor Lawrence-led team right there would be considered a playoff team. They took some major steps forward last year. Everybody expects them to continue that forward momentum into this season, and they were completely shut down by the defense and it's not even a bend and break defense, which is what the Chiefs have had in the past, where they bent, but didn't break. This defense is a stopper now.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. And I think you're right, Joe. I think that difference comes from the secondary, because the last couple of years, the secondary has given up a lot of big plays, which have led to a lot of points, to where the offense has had to score 28 or 35 to make sure that they won. This year, so far, that secondary is healthy, and they're strong, and they're playing great, and that showed in this game, because those receivers for Jacksonville are good, and they didn't do anything of import.
And, Josh, the reason they did not is because football and the passing game, when you're concentrating on that, which Jacksonville does, is timing.
Oh, yeah.
The quarterback's not looking for his open receiver. He's throwing to a spot on the field where that receiver's supposed to be, and he had to throw ahead of time, because here's Jones and some of these others coming in there and creating all sorts of pressure. That's what I say, that they're out of their rhythm. They could not get the timing down. In fact, you saw one when Jacksonville looked like they scored a touchdown at the end of the game, toward the end in the fourth period, and the receiver was running the baseline. He wasn't intended to be there. He was out of the baseline. He was over the end zone because the pass was thrown at the wrong time. It's, again, a matter of timing.
Karlaftis has been very impressive, and that's one of the things that the Chiefs have been missing, is a guy that finishes out what Chris Jones kind of starts. And he's, I think, the real deal for the Kansas City Chiefs this year.
No question about that. He is, but he's also an expensive deal.
Well, I'm talking about Karlaftis.
Oh, Karlaftis? Oh, no. Yeah, well, he's with him for another, 3 years or so?
I think so, yeah.
But I'm saying he's the real deal.
Oh, I agree.
So let's talk about the other side of the ball, which has not played so well so far this season. What's wrong with the Chiefs' offense, Ned?
I don't think anything. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that they don't feel the pressure of having to carry the team the way they did in the past, because the defense is there and playing well. And Mahomes has new people. He doesn't have a Tyreek Hill to throw to. He didn't last year, but they were able to overcome that. Juju Smith-Schuster is not there. You rely on an old pro like that. Their other receivers are new, and they may still be having trouble running some of the patterns, and they are intricate patterns that Andy Reid has in that game plan. That's part of it, and I think the running game has taken a step or two backwards, not because they're not capable, but because I don't think the Chiefs are concentrating quite a bit on that. Isaiah Pacheco is a little banged up. He has a shoulder injury. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm not even sure he even dressed last week. He was listed as ill. But, again, the running game does need to come to the fore a little bit more. But, guys, they're a good football team. Come on, the Chiefs, they have it going for them.
Josh, your thoughts? A lot was made of the Chiefs not running the ball very much in the first half of the game last week, and Andy Reid said you got to pass to be able to run later on, and we saw that kind of work out with the first play of the second half, Pacheco breaking it off for 31 yards. But do you see the Chiefs being more balanced this week?
I hope so, because to me it's the opposite of what he said. You have to run the ball to set up the pass. That makes more sense to me, because if you can establish the run, then it brings 8 players into the box to stop that run, and then you've got somebody who's not covered when you're throwing the ball. So I think he's thinking of it the wrong way. And I you know what? I'm not an NFL coach. He's won Super Bowls, but he also is his own worst enemy, in my opinion, because I think it's obvious that he is making some play calls for the offense that are too cutesy. And I would rather they do that in the fourth quarter when they're up by 20 points. You know, I mean, I remember a quote from Magic Johnson where he said during the Showtime era of the Lakers, their goal was to be ahead by so much by the end of the third quarter that none of them played in the fourth quarter. that's the way the Chiefs should think, because the Chiefs have that much ability. They are good enough to run a team out of the stadium to where by the fourth quarter none of the starters would need to play. But they're not doing that.
I don't know if they're that good.
I think they are.
I don't think they have the receiving talent. I don't think that they've found the right mix in the receiving talent. And I think that's the key of why this team looks offensively off, because they're still trying to figure out, and I think Patrick Mahomes is still trying to figure out who's the guy outside of Travis Kelce. Is it Sky Moore? Is it going to be Rashee Rice? Is it going to be Tony if he plays? I mean, he's got an injury again today. They said he probably suit out. Pacheco's a little banged up. He'll probably suit out. You're listening to Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show brought to you by The Dive. I'm Patton, the best place to take in the Chiefs game downtown. It's a wonderful, wonderful venue. And I'm with Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts. We're talking Chiefs. We're talking about what's wrong with the offense. Ned says nothing's wrong with the offense. Josh says that Andy Reid's what's wrong with the offense. I say they just need to figure out what's going on. Alec, time for you to chime in.
I think it's going to get worked out in the end, but time's going to heal everything here, because the receiving room looks a little different. Kelsey's knee's been a little banged up, and it's just figuring out what happens after Travis Kelce, because everyone knows that's going to be where they're looking first and foremost. Sure. And then it's just going to, Mahomes getting more on the same page with some of the new receivers, the guys who are trying to fill that role. And, I like to think that they will step up and figure it out. There's a world where they don't, so the Chiefs need to make sure they're continuing to work at it. But when you have the quarterback that they have, it tends to get sorted out in the end. But there's usually 1 or 2 games a year ever since Andy Reid's been here where we'll go, the Chiefs ran 8 times that game, ? Even, and it's like, and they average 8 yards a carry or something, and he just gets away from it. It happens sometimes. But if I'm calling plays and I have that quarterback back there, I'm also probably tempted to just say, we'll figure it out. Let's keep throwing it. But great teams find ways to win, even when one thing that they're even known for isn't working. So the offense wasn't going great, the defense stepped up, and that's the mark of a great team.
Absolutely.
The other side picks you up.
Who do you think the guy will be at the end of the season, Ned? Look into your crystal ball and tell me, who will it be?
In terms of leading their team?
Yeah, and don't say Travis Kelce, out of the receiving core.
Oh, in the receivers?
Yeah.
Of the receivers? Other than Kelce?
Yeah.
Because I think it probably will be Kelce.
Well, yeah, but
I think Tony, if he is healthy, is certainly capable if he can hold on to the ball. I like the Rice kid from Southern Methodist. He's a very good, solid player, and he has a good set of hands on him, too. I like him. But you have to, there's no way you can predict something like that. Who decides to come to the fore will be whomever that individual is. It's not going to be a selection of the better one, because they're all about the same.
What do you think, Josh?
I'm going to say Sky Moore. I see a lot of potential with that guy from what he's done so far and early in this season. I think he has the ability to make some spectacular catches if they can get the ball to him, if he can figure out the routes he's supposed to run, that kind of thing. So I'll say Sky Moore will be the number 2 guy by the end of the season.
What about you, Alec?
I think we're going to look back in this year, and there's not going to be a one guy. I think it's just going to be a week to week. I 2 weeks ago said I thought Tony was going to step up, and he had the worst playing night of his life. So I think they're all capable. I think last year, it was Juju 1 week, and then when everyone went down, Valdez-Scantling stepped up. I think the scheme is going to dictate that next man up is going to be a shared role amongst all of them, and as long as Kelsey's cooking, that will fall into place.
If there's a team that you want to get well with offensively, it's probably the Chicago Bears.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you look for from the Chiefs today? Because this, on their schedule, I know what you say, Ned, any given Sunday, but on their schedule, this is a light spot, wouldn't you say?
This is not one of the given Sundays, no. After all, the Chiefs, and now in all fairness, this game started out as a 13-point spread for Kansas City earlier this week, but now it's down to 12.5.
Oh, my gosh.
Bears all the way.
Well, what happened?
No, the Chiefs will win this one probably with little difficulty in terms of the score. Now, Justin Fields is a very good quarterback. He hasn't run the ball the way I thought Justin Fields would. He may not have been allowed to. That may not be part of the game plan. Hard to say. But the fact is that he can do some things, like I pointed out with you, Josh, a little bit earlier. The difference between there is a difference between the Chiefs and the Bears. The Bears are not as good personnel-wise as Kansas City. Let's face it, they aren't. But the difference is not like it is when you see some of these college matchups.
Right.
No, it's not that big a gulf. But there's a gap between these two. However, just like Joe said, you never can tell. You can today. You can tell today.
Well, I think this is a game, too, that's always circled on every 3 years on Patrick Mahomes' calendar because he could have been wearing the brown and orange. He could be wearing it right now. Mm-hmm. But he's not. He's wearing, thankfully, for all of us Chiefs fans, he's wearing the Chiefs colors. But I think he likes to prove it when he's out there against Chicago. He likes to show them up.
Patrick Mahomes, no matter who you're playing, is a gamer, and he'll do his absolute utmost best every time he is out there. There is no taking your foot off the pedal with him, as you did see with the Oregon-Colorado game yesterday when Colorado took their foot off the pedal. Oregon took their foot off the pedal and just coasted past. They didn't have to. They could have left Bo Nix in the game, but why bother? You're risking injury. Well, the same with the Chiefs. Mahomes doesn't adopt that theory. He is out there and he is giving his best every time out, and he wants to kick teams in the behind.
Let me correct you about something, Ned, because Colorado did take their foot off the pedal. Actually, they never had it on the pedal.
It was not on the pedal.
I don't think they were even in the car.
I think they were walking.
In that game. Okay. Break it down for us about Patrick Mahomes' new contract, what it does and what it doesn't, how it helps the Chiefs, and what's going on with all that.
Well, it's done because the other four quarterbacks in the NFL all made more money each season, more than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes' contract, which extends through, I think, 2030 or 2031. I must admit, I don't know. But it was structured to where he would be paid more each season down the line. Well, the Chiefs say, well, that's really not fair when these others are getting $52 and $53 million a year and Patrick's only getting $45 million.
Only.
So they have restructured that to now where he gets until 2026. I think it's a scale of $52 million this year, $55 million next year, $54 million, and this is per season. And then they will restructure the contract in 2026. And they'll probably restructure it upwards. He's already getting $500 million. Well, it's $490 million a year. Well, they're going to, if he is continuing to play at this level, and I'm sure he will be, then they will restructure it upwards.
What's the first thing you buy when you get that contract?
A small nation.
A small nation. A small nation. A state. Have your own state. What about you, Alec? What do you buy?
Oh, man, my brain is boring. I guess I go to the practical stuff. It's like, well, I pay off my house, and then I maybe get a new car. I don't know. It's an amount of money that it's hard to even fathom. But that he's making more per second than I might make in a year. It's just a little hard to wrap your head around.
What about you, Josh?
Ireland. I'd buy Ireland.
How does this help the Chiefs, though? I mean, we've talked about them being up against it with the salary cap. Does it help them or hurt them?
I don't think that did not enter into that at all. This was a personal circumstance. As far as the salary cap's concerned, it's still going to be a large. They'll be over the salary cap next year if they decide to keep Chris Jones on the ball club. They'll be over it. They'll have some cutting to do, which is one of the reasons why I don't think they'll let him go as a free agent or put the franchise tag on him. The trouble is, if they put the franchise tag on him and nobody goes after him, yeah, you can trade him when they have the franchise tag.
Yeah.
And he can also, he's an unrestricted free agent, so he could make his own deal, and then the Chiefs had the opportunity to match it. But suppose nobody does. And then you're stuck with the $32 million a year. Oh, boy, what are we going to do with the budget now? That's why there's some decision.
I will say, though, with the cap, I'm forgetting the number offhand, but it did create some short-term room. It did this restructuring for the Chiefs did allow them a little in-season maneuvering with the cap. But long-term, it's always going to hurt. But these quarterbacks are expensive.
When we come back, we'll talk about what Ned alluded to, college football and not so prime time yesterday. It's Ned Talk, brought to you by The Dive. I'm Patton.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
One of the great things you have to say about the NFL is they hire blind referees. And I saw somebody get whacked in the head and no interference call.
So that's why Bill Belichick had that eye chart that he was showing.
Yeah. He's not a
still
very
mad.
demonstrative guy, but gosh, that was a pass interference. That was pass interference. I
blatant.
think they would show that in a film and say this is pass interference, and it didn't get called.
Yeah.
Yesterday, college football. We like to talk about that because we've got some college football fans here. We've got Josh Roberts, a big college football fan, Alabama. Alec likes Mizzou. Ned is just a college football aficionado. What was your game of choice yesterday, Ned?
Well, I watched the Bears Missouri State play.
They played well.
They played very well. Played Utah Tech, which is not a good team, but a team that's doing the right thing. They've made the commitment and already announced that they're making this commitment to going D1A, and they will in the next couple of years as soon as they build up their recruiting and their eligibility factor. But right now, their quarterback wasn't very good. Missouri State turned the ball over the first two times they had the ball, fumbled, and Utah Tech could not capitalize. You knew right then this game's over. The Bears won at 59-14. Their quarterback, Clark, had a really, really big day. Utah Tech is not very good. You know who they play next week? Colorado State.
Wow.
They play them in Fort Collins. It's the same Colorado State team that almost beat Colorado.
They took Colorado to overtime.
So they're going to have some trouble. But the college game that I really wanted to focus on and didn't see much of was Notre Dame and Ohio State. And it turned out to be an absolute classic with Ohio State winning on the last play of the game. They couldn't kick a field goal. They had to score a touchdown, and they did, and beat Notre Dame 17-14.
What did you think of all the post-game theatrics that went along with that game over Lou Holtz's comments during the week?
Well, Ohio State's coach is not very complimentary of Lou Holtz. Holtz did say that he felt that the Ohio State's defense was soft and could be beaten that way, and they always have been. Well, Lou Holtz, pretty good coach, folks. He's been in the Hall of Fame and all that sort of thing. Well, Ryan Day, who is coach at Ohio State, was not happy with those comments, and he, at the end of the game, keep in mind, he's fortunate that he won the game. Get this, guys. Notre Dame on the final two plays of the game. One was a long pass that got Ohio State to the 1 yard line with 3 seconds to go, and they're trailing 14-10 in this game. So Notre Dame, no timeouts. The Irish didn't have any timeouts at all. 10 players on the field with the final two plays because they could not get the 11th guy on there. Now, you blame that on the coaching. That's your sideline. Yeah. Anyway, they ended the game with 10 players on the field and Ohio State scoring the winning touchdown. So when you do that, you've lucked out a little bit. Ohio State is a good team. They're a very good team. May be a chance at the Big Ten championship. They had some challenges remaining. Michigan is on there. Penn State goes to Columbus to play, and I think that's the week after next, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll see. They still got some pretty good challenges remaining, and so do the Irish. Notre Dame has this game that they lost themselves 17-14 to Ohio State, and next week they go to Durham and play Duke, and Duke is no pushover. They're a very good team. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. That was the one game that I focused on more than I did watch some of the Colorado-Oregon game, knowing fully well that Oregon was going to take out all their weapons on this one, and they did.
Oh, they beat Colorado like a drum yesterday. Alec, did you watch any of that game?
I was tracking along. I didn't get a chance to watch, but this was I feel Colorado's first big test. They were 3-0, but their three opponents, TCU, that's a respectable win in TCU's house, but TCU not quite what they were last year. And then Nebraska, who's been down for years, and then Colorado State, who, they're not a
– and the double overtime game.
Yeah, and a double overtime where I couldn't believe. I watched that one, and I couldn't believe Colorado State didn't go for 2 in the first overtime for the win. But I digress there. This was their biggest test by a mile, and it didn't look good for them coming out of it. And then next week it gets no easier. Even if you're hosting, they got USC and Caleb Williams coming to town.
Difference will be that the offensive line has to go give the Sanders kid. Excuse me, they have to give him some time. He is getting mauled in that backfield. I mean, the defensive line is coming in. They're just overpowering him. The Colorado team does not have a legitimate offensive line. Now, will Southern Cal present that kind of a challenge? They'll try, but they probably not are defensive-oriented as Oregon. But Southern Cal can score. And they have Caleb Williams, the one-time Oklahoma star, and his old coach out there at Southern Cal. They're lighting it up, had 42 points against Arizona State. But that's another very big test. And Colorado has big tests for the most part the rest of the season.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch. Just with Shedeur Sanders and Caleb Williams matchup next week. I'm already looking forward to that.
If Sanders can get the ball off, he could put some points up on the Trojans, but I don't think they can stop him at all.
I can tell you one of the things I hate about college football right now is that they all the time, the quarterback, he used to play for boom, 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 and now he plays for this school, and it's kind of ridiculous.
That's the way the transfer portal operates. Bo Nix at Oregon. My God, he was a great star, All-America at Auburn, and didn't like it. Hey, out he goes. He has that option, and he's making the most of it. That's just one slight example.
Josh, Alabama, how did it go?
Oh, they won. They looked better.
Meh.
Ole Miss is good. I don't like Lane Kiffin, and I'll never give him the respect that he probably deserves because he's a turd. But Alabama committed to the run more in the second half of this game, and that's when they took over, and they won it. It was closer than it should have been, but that's where Ned will give credit to Ole Miss. They're not a bad team. Their defense is solid. They've got a good offense, but Alabama still – their offense is not – it's a very similar situation to what we talk about with the Chiefs. Alabama's defense is stellar, and their D-backs are amazing. They have a player named Kool-Aid McKinstry, by the way.
What?
His name is Kool-Aid. It's awesome. But
oh, yeah.
But their offense is not playing the way it's capable of playing. I think they've got to stick with their quarterback that they had this week, Milroe. Stick with him. He's the guy, and build from there. But when they committed to the run, they wore out Ole Miss's defense, and that's how they won that game. I do have a comment. I watched the whole Ohio State Notre Dame game. Notre Dame deserved to win that game.
They should have been.
Notre Dame was the better team on the field, and they couldn't run out the clock at the end of the game. They gave the ball back to Ohio State with like a minute and 26 seconds. And then they played
deep in Ohio State's own territory.
Yeah, and then they were way too conservative on defense when all game they had been putting pressure on that quarterback and being successful. And that allowed Ohio State to get in that position. And then when Ohio State scored, there was still a second left. Mm-hmm. Then Ohio State kicked the ball out of bounds, which gave Notre Dame the ball on the 35, and then they just tried to do a hook and ladder thing, and it didn't work. But Notre Dame was the better team. Notre Dame should have won that game.
They were ahead the whole game, 14-10 at the very end, and then you look at it. The reason they played soft is because a field goal wasn't going to beat them.
Right.
And your chance of scoring a touchdown it's not nil, obviously, but it's pretty limited.
But the problem is Ohio State has really good receivers, and the Notre Dame defense didn't match up very well with them, which is why they were putting so much pressure, because Notre Dame's defensive front was better than Ohio State's offensive line. Mm-hmm. And that they got away with they went away from that in that final drive, and that's why they lost that game.
I think you see it over and over now, though, that prevent defense, that teams are so scared to give up the big play. They'll play an entirely different defense from what they've played all day, and they're like, we'll give you 10-yard plays, and then you do that 4 times. It's like, oh, no. They're on the 20 already. How'd this happen? It's like exactly. I would rather see if it's a team I'm rooting for, I'd rather see them line up and play it straight up with a bigger risk of getting burned over top. But you shut down that stuff I don't want to see them give them 12-yard chunks all the way down the field. I've seen so many leads blown that way.
I watched the Clemson-Florida State game, which was a big win for Florida State. First time they beat Clemson in several years. Felt really bad. I don't know if you watched the game. One of the stories behind that game was the kicker for Clemson. He was a graduate student. He'd been on the roster, and then in the last season he left. And after last season he left, and he knew who the kicker was going to be, and he just became a student. And they haven't had very much success with that kicker this season, so they called him last Sunday and asked him to join the squad again, and he, is deciding a game, and actually poor guy misses a kick. He was perfect up to that point, but it's just kind of a lot of pressure to put on a guy.
That's another one where I feel Clemson outplayed Florida State and deserved to win that game, but then they just didn't at the end.
They didn't finish. You've always got to be finishing.
Right, and stick with the game plan that got you to that point where you're winning.
We're 24 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show right here on 104.7 The Cave. You're listening to Ned Talk. It's brought to you by The Dive on Patton. We'll be back.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
We're brought to you by The Dive on Patton, the place to take in Chiefs games this season. Downtown, the great place to hang out. There's super nice people there. They were our home this year for our Chiefs Happy Hour, and they threw out the welcome mat, and everybody had a great time. Let's turn our attention away from football for a few minutes. We're about 20 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show. Talk a little bit about baseball. Not a lot changed over the last week as far as our division, or as far as the division that most people around here care about, and that's the National League Central. The Cubs, your Cubs are fading here.
They are fading. They lost. They couldn't beat Arizona. They played Arizona 7 games in the last month and won 1 of them. And then they lost, 2? Did they lose 2 to Colorado? Anyway, they've got 1 more game against Colorado, which they better win. But then they've got 3 against Atlanta and 3 against Milwaukee to finish the season. And they're all on the road. They're all in Atlanta and then in Milwaukee. Now, the only thing they've got going for them is both those teams have clinched playoff spots already. So they may not be playing their starters or all their starters. But they're also, at this point, they're 5 games behind the Phillies for the wild card. I don't know if they're going to. And they're 3-7 in their last 10.
Might have an advantage here. Atlanta's kind of banged up coming down the end of the season. They're losing arms pretty fast, and that could spell trouble for them as they head into the playoffs. Ned, what are the St. Louis Cardinals doing? I mean, I know they've been eliminated for about a month, but what have you seen?
Playing out the string. Now that's a subconscious thought on their part. They all go out there intending to win. Won last night, but the fact is that they are not playing as focused baseball as they could. They're 19 games under 500 with
20.
Are they even 20?
No, I'm sorry, they're 20 back.
This is probably illegal, but I will tell you that I have access to 2 tickets to the Cardinals game with the Cincinnati Reds next Saturday night. Sell them to you at face value, 2 of them. Face value is pretty expensive, but still 2 tickets, and you never know. Wainwright might pitch that night.
Yeah, so he's at 199, right?
He got it.
No, he's got 200.
He got his 200.
How do you do that?
That was the big story of the week. If the Cardinals team as a whole can't go anywhere, at least we got Wainwright over the finish line to that 200th win. And who would have thought that 199 came against Atlanta? And then, or was it Atlanta, or was it?
It wasn't Atlanta.
No. Oh no, he got crushed by Atlanta, but they beat someone. He got his
Milwaukee.
It was like 199 against Milwaukee, and then we got 200 for him, and so it was awesome to see. There's not been a lot to root for this year, and I don't know if Wainwright's going to pitch again, but there's been plenty of stories, though. He's got his batting gloves on him.
They might let him go up. 199 was Atlanta, and 200 was Milwaukee.
That's what it was. But he might take an at-bat this weekend. So those face value tickets and Ned's, not to mention they're doing this whole weekend's promos are going to be Wainwright related. He's putting on a concert.
I'd plunk him.
That would
He
be
got in my batter's box, I'd hit him.
all-time
But
rude.
Joe, in terms of what you were talking about, though, and testing rookies and so forth, yeah, they're mixing their lineup a little bit and see who can play and who can't and who really gives a damn about what they're doing. They have to make some trades in the offseason. They have to get pitchers, and I think they're probably grooming the individuals who are going to go to the Arizona Fall League and play, and they're getting them all set too. It's an interesting time of the year, but certainly one of the very few times when we can sit back and say, hey, Cardinals ain't going anywhere this year.
Do they retain their manager at the end of the year?
Yeah, he's already signed.
Well, I mean, sign's no big deal.
But
they keep him.
You don't offer him a new contract and sign him for another year unless you plan on keeping him. Which
When did they do that?
Last week.
Really?
They Mosaic said, yeah, he'll be back. He'll be back next year. He made that confirmation.
I'm proud of you, Cardinals. Way to strive for mediocrity.
What about you, Alec? What do you think? What's on your Christmas list for the Cardinals this year?
Oh, pitching, I guess, is going to be the big thing. And then, I don't know, it does seem like it's about time for some sort of either managerial or front office thing. It just seems like things have gotten stale in the building. It's just been more of the same, had been the quota, and now this year it went down. And this is an organization that's not going to overreact is the word I'm going to use, which on the one hand I think is a good thing. I think there's way too much of a itchy trigger finger in sports these days in terms of pulling it on your coach or your manager. And what do you bring in a coach for a team that won 2 football games the year prior and fire him when he wins 3? What did you think was going to happen? The team's terrible. But this team needs more talent, especially on the pitching side. The bullpen's not very deep. The starting rotation's weak. I think the offense just needs to find some consistency. The right guys might be in the building for that, but pitching, that still wins baseball games today.
Oakland, are they going to move to Las Vegas? I mean, this just seems like it's this ongoing drama where you hear, well, here's what the stadium will look like, and then you hear another story, well, it's not a done deal. Do you know anything about what's going on with that?
It's the financing that they're working out with the Nevada state legislature, but no, they'll move. It won't be next year.
But Major League Baseball still hasn't voted on it, is what I've heard.
They'll vote for it.
You think so?
Oh, sure. If they have a locale all set and they have the money coming in place, they'll absolutely vote for that. They have to do something with the franchise. There's just no ifs, ands, and buts about it, and it's not going to be in Oakland. They will be there next year because that's the final year on the lease in their contract. They don't want to have to forfeit that kind of money. But they will be moving to Vegas probably in 2025 and probably play in the minor league ballpark, which they will have a year to refurbish and get to major league standards, and then they get ready for the new one, which opens, I believe, in 2027, and the new one in Tampa opens up in St. Petersburg, I should say, 2028.
All right, here we are. Basically last week of baseball, last regular season week coming up. Baltimore is on top of the American League East. They have the second best record in baseball. Atlanta, I mentioned earlier, banged up. They have the best record in baseball. And then it's the Dodgers and the Brewers and the Tampa Bay Rays and Minnesota. The only real races to be decided here is the wild card spot in the National League. And then there's who's going to win the American League West. It's within 2 games between 3 teams, Texas, Houston, and Seattle. What's your bet there, Ned? Who's going to win that?
Well, I'll tell you who's slumping at the moment is the Astros. Mm-hmm. Who have they lost to this entire weekend of all teams? The Royals. The Royals seem to have their number for some reason. Isn't that the way it works?
Yeah.
Still, don't sell them short. Houston's a very good baseball team. I think Seattle has perhaps the sleeper in there. They're also very, very good. And, hey, you can't tell. You don't know how it's going to come down in the end. I would, if I were having to make a bet, which, I'm very much anti-betting.
Adamantly against that, yeah.
I would pick Houston to come out as certainly one of the wild card teams.
So who do you think we're going to see in the World Series? Pick your 2 teams right now.
Atlanta in the National League would be it, and in the American League, I'd be surprised to see the Astros. The Orioles have played well, but they're young. They're very young, and maybe not ready for it. I'll say the Astros and say the Rays and the Braves is who I would pick.
What about you, Alec?
I was actually leaning towards Rays as well, but I'm going to say Dodgers. I think that team in the postseason is going to get it figured out. I don't like it, but give me that Freddie Freeman and I'm completely spacing on his name, the outfielder.
Tyreek Hill?
Yep, Chris Jones and Tyreek Hill. Boy, it'll come to me when I'm not on the radio, but I think Dodgers and Rays.
Josh?
Ooh, I'll say Baltimore's going to make it. They'll make it into the World Series. And then in the National League, if it's not the Cubs, I don't care. So I'll say Milwaukee.
I don't think it'll be Milwaukee. I think my pick's Baltimore and Atlanta. I think that'll be a really good World Series.
That would be, I think, yeah.
Because we got two good teams and the proximity between the teams will be nice. I don't think the Rays have the horses. I disagree with you, Ned. Even though Baltimore is young, they've been tested down the stretch and have really continued to hold Tampa Bay at arm's length distance. So we'll see. 11 minutes till the start of the Chiefs pregame show. You're listening to Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show brought to you by The Dive on Patton.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
During the break, we got a phone call from a tailor looking for Ned, but we hung up because we thought it was Keith maybe calling instead of Taylor. It's Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show brought to you by The Dive on Patton, Joe Westen, Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts. It is that time where we do our picks, our crazy picks. You know, it's not anybody else does this. It's totally unique to sports shows.
I know, nobody.
That we pick the games. I can't believe that nobody's ever discovered this before now as a venue for doing this sort of thing. Can you, Ned?
We're trailblazers.
What we need to do is change the name of it to Pointed Prognostications or something of that nature.
Yeah, I like that. Pointed Prognostications. A lot of alliteration from anxious anchors placed in precarious positions. All right.
Why not?
Ned,
Why not?
your pointed I can't even
Pointed
say
Prognostications.
it. You say it for me.
Okay.
Who do you pick in today's game?
Out on a limb, I'm picking the Chiefs to win. The 12.5 points I don't really think is enters into the picture here. I think Kansas City wins by as much as really they want to. The Chicago team, they're just in disarray. Justin Fields has talked a little bit about not being comfortable with calling the plays. Their defensive coach resigns under sordid circumstances. They're just a team in disarray. I think they come in here without a focal point, without a game plan in mind, and I think the Chiefs beat them rather handily.
I bet they hired John Gruden this week to do something for them. Alex Scott, what do you see in this game?
We alluded to it earlier. If there's a time, if you want to see a get-right game on your schedule, this sure seems like it's going to be one. We haven't seen much out of the offense these first couple weeks. I don't think it's time to hit a panic button. I think if it doesn't look good again this week, still no panic button, but there's a real cause for concern. I think they find it this week, though. I think it's been a tough week in Chicago. Like you said, the defensive coordinator resigning. There's been rumors of his house getting raided by the FBI, equipment being stolen from Soldier Field. There's a lot going on in Chicago right now outside of the football team. So I'm going to take Chiefs 34, Chicago 13.
I saw that story that $100,000 worth of equipment stolen from Soldier Field. How's that even happen?
Well,
I don't know.
You're thinking about football equipment, and it is in a sense, but these were power mowers and things like that went into the auxiliary effect on that. Part of the groundskeeping and all that. It wasn't necessarily shoulder pads and things like that.
I had to go out and buy some more mowers this week.
If anybody needs a John Deere mower, you can contact me.
It's got a Bears logo on the side of it, by the way.
It's a really collector's piece.
It's brown and orange for you there. What's your pick today, Josh?
Well, so everybody in Vegas is betting on the Chiefs and betting that they're going to cover the spread. So I'm going to say the Chiefs win 28-17. And don't cover the spread because then Vegas makes its money. And I'll tell you how all that stuff was stolen from Soldier Field. The one time that I went to Soldier Field, I walked up there just to take a picture, and you could just walk right into that area where all that equipment is. It's open.
So you did it?
When were you in Chicago last?
Yeah, we'd like to speak to you.
I just wanted to take a picture of the field. And so I walked up the ramp, and there was a guy in there, one of the groundskeepers. And I said, hey, is it okay if I take a picture of the field? He's like, no, man, there's too many cameras out here, and we don't even have the lines drawn on it yet. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't want to get you in trouble. But all of that equipment that got stolen was sitting right there,
Josh,
in that part of the stadium.
This fits right into a Columbo scene.
Yeah, it does.
Sir, what time, sir, were you there?
One more thing.
One more thing.
Let me tell you, if you like Columbo, there's a show you should watch. It's called Poker Face.
Poker Face?
Yeah, very Columbo.
It's not with
It's
Peter
on a
Falk,
streaming
is it?
service. It's on Peacock, I believe, your former employer. Yeah. Okay, I'm going with the I go with the Chiefs to win today, and I'm going 24-6. I don't think the defense will give up a touchdown today. Could be wrong. How many touchdowns do you have the defense giving up today?
I have them giving up none.
You, Alec.
1.
What about you, Josh?
2.
So I've got none. Ned's got none. 1, 2. We'll see how that works out. We'll be back next Sunday, I believe, is when we're on the air again. We're on again next Sunday at, it's a later game, so we'll be on at 5.
5 o'clock, yeah.
We got a Jets game, a Jets sighting tomorrow or Sunday. So be with us then. It's Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show. I'm Joe Westen. Thanks to Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts, Corbin Campbell, Brian Tyndall, Mike the intern. Enjoy the game, folks.
.7 The Cave, KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield. Your home for the Kansas City Chiefs and Springfield's pure classic rock.